So we'll go ahead and kick it off with whoever wants to start.
Just looking back on the last game, just how do you feel like the offense acquitted itself overall?
It seems like a long time ago now. Overall, I would say that we had a good night, not a great one. Wish we could have started a little bit better. Turnovers on 2 of your first 3 drives, certainly not the way that you'd like for it to go. But once we settled in, I think we played pretty efficiently from there. Scored touchdowns on every drive after that. Really scored touchdowns on every drive other than the 2 turnovers and the end of game series. And so, if we just don't give them the ball, then I think we're in position to feel like we had a really, really good night. But that doesn't erase those 2 turnovers, and certainly we got to do a better job with ball security. And then, I think as the game went on, they played a little bit more conservatively after we took a couple of shots early, and that resulted in us running the ball quite a bit and them playing a lot of cover 2 behind it and giving us the opportunity for the run game to kind of be the feature from the second quarter on. One thing I was pleased with, there was I would say an appropriate amount of frustration on the sideline after we kind of hit that lull after the 2 turnovers. Then we come out, run the ball and get nothing on it, don't block it very well, needed a spark. We throw a bubble to Luke, who, as he often does, just kind of made something happen. And he was a spark for our offense when we needed a spark.
We saw a lot of the end around jet motion stuff. I know you've done that in the past, but for you, how do you feel like that stresses a defense?
Well, it's there are various ways you can get the ball around the edge with misdirection. There are reverses, there are options, there are quarterback zone reads. It's the fastest way to get the ball on the perimeter because you're handing it to someone right now, and then typically you either have an option read that could bring the ball back inside or the other way. So as opposed to most zone reads or triple options or even a reverse, it's sort of the inverse of that. So instead of ball here and then ball there, it's ball there and then here. And so I think it puts stress on the defense because there has to be some trigger by them to immediately deal with it. And once there is, then it gives you the opportunity to do other things off of that.
Hey Jeff, do you have an advantage at all that you played one game in Illinois, haven't really seen what you do maybe as an offense?
I hope so.
What's
Yeah,
it like?
we didn't obviously. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah, just what's it like for you? It's your first year here, but with the team having played Illinois last year, how do you kind of negotiate that and taking inspiration from that game, also putting your own stamp on it?
Yeah, well, obviously it's a game that you watch a lot because we're a bit of a unique offense and they're a unique defense, and so your eyes keep going back to that game to get a feel for how they're going to play us. I try not to talk a lot about the previous year or even the previous game because I'm a really big believer in the fact that this year is this year and this game is this game. There's a saying, no man ever steps in the same river twice because it's not the same river and he's not the same man. And I think that's true in football as well. However, I do think there are lessons that can be learned, and I think one of those lessons is the fact that they're very motivated to play this game, I'm sure, and so we need to make sure that we are as well.
You guys did some rotating at right tackle with Nolan and Logan in the first half. Just what went into doing that in the first half, where I think a lot of times, right, you see that more in like the second half?
Yeah, those are both guys that we feel like are capable players, battled for the position, and Logan won the right to start, but we always knew that there was a good chance that Nolan would play some as well, and thought both of them did fine.
And just overall, how do you feel about the offensive line's performance?
I thought they got better as the game went on. I thought the protection was really good. Weren't tested a whole lot. I don't mean that in any form of disrespect towards our previous opponent, but not a lot of pressure and not a lot of movement from the defensive line. And so I don't know if that was really an accurate reflection of where we are. We'll find out a lot more after this game, because we'll certainly get a lot of tests on almost every play. Every lineman is tested with a one-on-one matchup in protection, and so that'll be a much larger challenge for us. And in the run game, I thought we showed some speed of play and aggression that told me we were kind of moving in the right direction. A lot of guys falling forward at the end of plays, bodies, carnage left over as a running back falls forward, and pulling guys, and linemen and tight ends pushing guys late. And so I think that was it could be the start of something and how we'd like to be able to say we can run the ball.
Jeff, when you look at Illinois on film, what do you see from their defense?
Yeah, so a very aggressive brand of football, number one, 90% of the time, more than that. 5 guys up on the line of scrimmage, as I alluded to a minute ago, a real challenge for your offensive line in that respect. And then aggressive coverage to match. Man coverage, cover one most of the time, and then they do a great job disguising. And so their change up is to play zone, and when they do, they bail to it. They don't show it early, and so they do as good a job disguising coverage as anybody I've seen. And they've got great speed in the secondary, and you don't play that much man if you don't feel like you have the guys who can cover man to man, and they do a really good job of it. And so what it will take in the pass game is guys winning those one-on-one matchups, both in the protection piece, one-on-one matchups up front, and then guys being able to shake one-on-one coverage and go win, and then put the ball where it needs to be and let a guy make a play on it.
Getting to work with Jalen, obviously you've been in spring practice and camp, but what was it like getting to just see him in game action?
Yeah, really excited to play, very composed during the game. Like I said, even when we had some struggles early, was never rattled, never shaken, excited for the next series. I thought he was seeing the game well, and I thought his overall vibe on the sideline was really positive.
Did you and Jalen have you had a specific conversation about off script and improv stuff? I mean, he's so used to what he's been doing, and now you're new to him, he's new to you, all that. Have you had to talk about that, or?
Yeah, I think that goes back to trust. And I've tried to share with him and all of our players to some extent, but the guy who touches the ball every play, there's got to be a greater level of trust, certainly. But my message to him has been that I do trust him, and trust ideally is a symbiotic relationship, and so I hope that he feels that same way about me and about Z and our entire coaching staff, and I think he does. And I think if you have that trust, then he understands that it's his job to be the best version of JD that he can be within the system. So going off script is, okay, this is the play that was called, and here's how we're going to run it, and now I've got to do this because this happened. The receiver who was primary fell down, or one of my linemen got beat in protection, or the snap was errant and I couldn't get the handoff. And so when those things happen, I've encouraged him to just be him, and other people around him, I think, recognize that there's real strength in that. And yeah, I just go back to the word trust, and I really do trust him to make the right decisions, and to know when it's time to improv.
Yeah, especially with a veteran like that. Are you comfortable with that? Coaches are famous for control, right? But are you, generally speaking, comfortable with the guy having that much freedom?
Yeah, absolutely. If I wasn't, then I think I would be keeping him from being who he could be. And I would say that about any player, but certainly a guy who has the sort of creativity that he does in his game. If I tried to say this is exactly how this play has to be run, then I think it would really hamstring him. I think he would be unhappy, and I think he would be less productive. And then on top of that, that's just not how football works. We draw plays up on board, and, we have all these cool call sheets and all these wonderful calls and all that stuff, but football doesn't work like that. Football just kind of it's a an evolving thing that changes on every play. And because of that, I think you've got to allow for guys to play within the system, but also within their personal ability.
Like the river.
Like what?
Like the river.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Being on the sideline and having the in-helmet communication, just how'd that process go for you guys?
Yeah, actually, so I'm in communication with Z and the other guys who are upstairs, and he is actually the one who's giving the play, the wristband number and all that stuff to the quarterback. And so it frees me up to do a little bit more on the sideline, and him being in the box and him being the guy that's coaching the guy most of the time. It gives him the ability to kind of talk him through the situation, and him being upstairs, he's got a better view of the play clock and everything else that's going on. And so the communication is going from me with the play call to Z out to Jalen.
I'm curious where'd that idea come from. I heard of a couple other colleges doing it, and they've cited people in the NFL doing it.
Yeah, just sort of happened by accident, really. Early in fall camp, the way we were doing it was with a walkie-talkie, and it's okay in practice. It's not great, but it's okay in practice because you can hold this and you can hold your practice script. Well, if you have an offense like ours, you don't have a call sheet like this. You've got a call sheet that's this big and it's double-sided. And so you got to be able to flip it over, and you got to be able to hold it with two hands. And I'm kind of always highlighting plays for the next series, or I called that one. And so as I'm working on that, it was just really hard to do that and try to hold the walkie-talkie in scrimmages. And so that came up in one of our scrimmages, and just said, all right, why don't you do that, Z? And it just worked really smooth. And so kind of went back and forth on it after that between me and him, and I think we both just agreed it was a very comfortable way for both of us to operate.
I think we asked about this when you first got here, but just what do you like about being on the field as a coordinator?
Well, I think I've done both. I think it's less about what I like and more about what I think is the best way to serve my team. And I think my strong suits are, my strongest gifts are being able to be down there in person, get a feel for the game, look in a player's eyes and see if he's in need of a challenge or a hug. If the offense needs to be challenged, if they're not playing up to their level, or if there's something that's just not right, then I feel like I've been in the box and felt frustrated seeing it down there and not being able to manage it the way that I felt like I could if I was down there. I feel like the human element and the relationship part of coaching is probably one of my strengths. Being a guy who coached offensive line for most of my career, that part of the game is something that is just part of me. Being in the box, you can see the game a little bit better, but what I've found is if I've got somebody who's really qualified who can see the game for me in the box and help me that way, which Z is certainly really, really good at that, then it allows all of us to kind of lean into what we do best.
One of the things that Illinois does that's a little bit unique is they basically have a 5-man front with the 2 guys walked up, and then they change what they do at the second level. How does that impact the way that you guys block things and maybe what you talk about with the offensive line this week?
Yeah, it makes it really, really challenging to create double teams. And so in most cases, it depends on the scheme, but in most cases, you don't have any double teams. In some cases, you might have one double team. Whereas if you have an even front with 4 guys on the line of scrimmage, you are often in position to have 2 double teams. And so it just puts more stress on every player on every down.
Does it change kind of the angles that you guys are able to hit too? Like maybe it's a little bit further to the left or further to the right than where you would be?
Yes, to some extent, but that's also coupled with the coverage that they play.
Sure.
So if a team's playing an odd front with, a 5-man line, 3 down, 2 outside linebackers, but they're doing it with a too high safety look, then the numbers are still fair up front. Everything's balanced. But as soon as they put another safety down towards the front and create a single high look, whether it's 1 or 3, and with these guys it's 1 most of the time, now they've got you outnumbered.
Yep.
And so not only do they have guys on the line of scrimmage, but they have you outnumbered. So now those angles are exacerbated because you got to push to somebody that's not just here, but he's over there.
Yeah.
And so everybody's a little bit further behind on their blocks. So yes, it is a significant challenge, and the numbers and the leverage would tell you that you should be throwing the football more than you should be running the football. I believe in balance, and so we're going to try to do both.
Jeff, did you learn anything about Devin and Daniel as a 1-2 punch against the Midwood, or was it just reinforcing what you already thought?
That's a good question. I think here's what I would say I learned. I think I may have said this in the summer or the off season at some point. I felt like the two of them obviously have different styles. Devin has the best make you miss ability of any big back I've ever been around, and Deuce doesn't want to make you miss. He wants to make you take him on. And I said if you could sort of combine those two things, or at least challenge each of them to become a little bit more of the other, then you might have a superhero. And so the challenge for Devin was to, when it's there, put your foot on the gas pedal and go. And when you've been a guy who for your entire life has been a guy that you couldn't tackle in a phone booth and has always he's the guy that always wins in tag, right? I mean, nobody's ever gonna beat him in that because his lateral quickness and instincts are just too good. But he's also big enough, strong enough, and fast enough to just put the pedal down and go. But when you've been that other guy your whole life, it's kind of hard to lean into that. And then when you've been what Deuce has been his whole life, which is just seek contact and enforce your will on it, then to try to work to an angle, and even if you're not going to stutter and make a guy miss or work a spin move, you can still attack an edge as opposed to just putting your face mask right down his. And I thought both of those guys showed more of those things. Growth for both of them.
Anything else for Coach?
All right,
Thanks,
good to see you. I'll take